Back on the Young Turks. Now, totally different interview. We're going to talk to Tim Kring. He is the creator of Heroes on NBC and author of the new book, Shift. It's a novel. Tim, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. I want to talk to you about Heroes. I want to talk to you about the book. Let's start with the book.
Sure.
What's it about?
Well, Shift is the first book in a trilogy called The Gate of Orpheus, and it's a historical thriller with kind of sci-fi or supernatural elements to it. And the first book, Shift, starts in 1963 and centers around the idea of the CIA mind control experiment that they were doing back then, where the CIA dosed over 120,000 unwilling and unwitting Americans with LSD in search of a kind of a Manchurian candidate or mind control.
That's real, right?
Yeah, that's all for real. And so this is set in that with that sort of as the backdrop of it, with the idea that we take one character, a grad student who gets embroiled in this in these CIA sort of unwittingly into these CIA LSD experiments, and ends up being this one in a million brain chemistry that actually unlocks these hidden potentials in his brain that allows him to have a kind of sort of superpowers, if you will, especially kind of telekinesis and telepathy and suspended animation. And so he ends up getting involved in the whole conspiracy of that sort of CIA program, and ultimately locks on to the idea of a conspiracy to kill President Kennedy and tries to stop it. And so it's a kind of historical thriller with those kind of elements.
Well, that's interesting because we had Governor Jesse Ventura on the show before, and he thinks there's some chance that actually happened, that they did mind control with Lee Harvey Oswald and LSD, etc. This is about the third or fourth time now I'm hearing about these mind control experiments. What do you think? Is there any chance that that happened in real life?
Well, obviously we may never know, but there's a lot of unanswered questions about what Lee Harvey Oswald's involvement with the CIA was, and his time in the Soviet Union, and the fact that they sort of were tracking him, and then sure enough he ends up, coming back to the country, and he had tried to kill Castro and couldn't kill Castro, and ended up coming back to the country and killing President Kennedy. So we'll never quite know what happened. But this particular story does feed off of a fair amount of speculation out there.
Right. Do we know if that mind control stuff worked on anybody? Like, I know they did all these different experiments. Do we have any idea if any of them ever worked?
I don't know that they ever really did. Timothy Leary is a character in the book, and it's actually sort of some of his theories that the book is really based on, with the idea he kind of believed that LSD had the ability to not only unlock the kind of doors of perception in the brain, but it could actually unlock these hidden potentials. He felt that we only used 5 or 10% of our brain power, and that LSD could unlock these kind of dormant abilities that man had much earlier in our history. Things like, as I said, telepathy and telekinesis. So he was certainly on to that idea, and that was something he was trying to prove.
Well, that certainly would have been badass. We're talking to Tim Kring. He wrote the book Shift, which is the topic that we were discussing. But you're also the creator of Heroes. So why bother writing a book? Because can't you just now retire off of Heroes and just sit on the beach the rest of your life?
I wish that was so. Heroes is owned by NBC, and so maybe someone there is retiring. But
don't the creators of these shows still make mad money?
Well, it's not what it used to be. Let me put it that way. And a show like Heroes is a very, very big, expensive show, and we all know what Hollywood accounting can do with the profits of these shows. So I'm not. Nobody should be feeling sorry for me, but I still have to work for a living. And actually, Shift actually came out of the writers' strike when we all went on strike, and I found myself unemployed with the possibility of a long dry spell, and I couldn't work in TV or features obviously because I was a guild member, but I could come up with a book idea, and so that's what I did.
That makes total sense. How did you get started as a writer in the first place? Did you do TV first, or did you do something else first?
Well, my first paying job in TV was writing for Knight Rider of all shows.
Did you write for Kit?
I wrote an episode of Knight Rider. I think it was very late in the run of the show, and it was almost kind of almost the end of the series. But that was the first my first paying job, and I thought I'd sort of died and gone to heaven with the idea that somebody actually paid me to sit in my room and crank out this kind of wacky story for that show. But I went to USC Film School, and I started writing scripts a couple of years after I got out of film school, and I worked in production, and then I decided that writing was sort of the easy. It still is that is the way that you can enter the Hollywood system at the highest level, is by sitting down and writing a script that somebody wants to buy.
Did the writing career get better or worse over time? We've talked to some television writers before on the show. I mean, was it better back in the days of Knight Rider in terms of money, etc., or is it better now?
Well, I think people were making a lot more money off of shows that were big hits back then. But that was never really the driving force for me. I wanted to stay employed, and I wanted to stay relevant, and I wanted to continue to work. And my career just sort of went up and up and up. I worked my way. I was very much I guess the baseball analogy would be I was a singles hitter. I'd get on base by getting jobs, and I worked all the time until I finally worked my way up to a position where somebody was willing to give me a shot at having my own show. And so I had a show on before Heroes called Crossing Jordan that was on for 6 seasons.
Yep.
And so that's sort of been the trajectory of my career.
See, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because I think that's interesting, too. We're talking to Tim Kring. He's the creator of Heroes, and his new book is Shift. So when you cross over from being a singles hitter to all of a sudden you're executive producing a show, which is great, and that's a huge jump. I'm sure it wasn't sudden, but how did that transition happen?
Well, like I said, for me, it felt very, I worked my way up to sort of, I guess you would call it the number 2 position on a couple of shows, where, I sat sort of next to the guy who was running the show. And so it was a kind of a logical next step. It's sort of like the vice president running for the presidency. It's sort of like the only job left on the resume is the big top dog. And so I really did very much earn my way up to the top in the kind of long, slow trajectory that you can have I've been writing obviously for the Knight Rider job was 25 years ago, so plenty of long time.
And Tim, how does the pitch for Heroes work? I mean, you go into the NBC executives, you're like, I got it. Look, these guys have superpowers. It's going to be awesome.
To be really honest, it was I had worked out a lot of the pilot before I went in and pitched it. And I fortunately, a lot of people have asked me this question, and the truth is I had an advantage because I was a known and successful producer at NBC when I walked in the door. And so I think they were willing to listen to this kind of bizarre pitch from me based, they sort of said, well, I don't know, I guess he seems to have a handle on this. Maybe we'll just let him go off and write it. It was, I think, one of those kind of things more than them being, enthusiastic right off the bat with it. But I like I said, I think somebody coming in off the street and having that idea without having a track record there would have had a much harder time pushing it, up the hill of development, which usually is a kind of an uphill battle at a network.
All right, and finally, your book Shift. Are we going to make it a TV series, or are we going to make it a movie? How's that going to work?
I've sort of thought about it in terms of a movie or maybe even a mini series. I'm not sure that it is exactly what it would have to be sort of really adapted to get to a TV series. And I'm currently working on the screenplay to adapt it into a film. And as I said, it's the first of a trilogy. So the story spans 50 years from 1963 to the present day. The second book takes place 25 years later, and the third book is is present day, which will be present day 2 years from now instead of present day now.
All right. Well, trilogies. I hear that's where the big bucks are. So makes sense.
Well, you know, and so hopefully it will capture people's imagination, and we'll see. We'll keep our fingers crossed.
All right. Makes sense. Tim Kring, the author of Shift. Thank you so much for joining us.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.